Meta AI is the personal AI that's tailored to you, now with its very own app. It's built to get to know you, offering helpful answers and inspiration. Looking for something to add to your bucket list? Meta AI goes beyond traveling the world. It remembers you're a basketball fanatic and suggests you attend one of the playoff games. Just start typing or speaking to get the answers you need, wherever and whenever, because Meta AI is your personal AI. Download the Meta AI app, now available on the Apple App Store and Google Play.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome. You are entering the Stone Zone. Well, we've got a full-blown Twitter war, X war, between Elon Musk and President Donald Trump. Look, I think Musk is a great patriot. And when he bought Twitter and turned it into X, the largest free speech site in the country, he put a big target on his back. Suddenly, he found that his previously liberal friends were investigating all 9 of his companies, and he came to the conclusion that they would destroy his companies and probably send him to jail. It was then that he decided to give his financial and personal support and efforts to Donald Trump. And I think he did help us win the election. I think he's done an amazing job at Doge, ferreting out not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars. But he decides he doesn't like the big, beautiful bill, but that's not really what he's mad about. He's right about the big, beautiful bill not having enough spending reduction, but a budget rescission bill, just structurally, I worked in the House of Representatives, Congressman Bob Steele of Connecticut, is not the place to do that. That would be in a rescission bill. Stephen Miller has a rescission bill going up to the Congress that will cut $98.4 billion. So that's not really what he's mad at. But this insane attack on Trump, saying Trump is in the Twitter files, that's why he's not releasing them, is categorically false. Trump was on Epstein's plane one time, that is publicly recorded. With him was Marla Maples and his daughter Tiffany. They went from New York to Palm Beach and back on a weekend at the time that Trump's plane was in the shop. Trump never visited his palatial apartment in palatial townhome in Manhattan like Steve Bannon did. He didn't go to his ranch in New Mexico. The one and only time Trump was in Epstein's home in Palm Beach, according to Virginia Jeffrey, one of the Epstein victims, in her sworn testimony, it was a cocktail reception for a charity, and that Trump was a perfect gentleman, and she witnessed no inappropriate activity by Trump. This is the one and only time that Trump is in Epstein's home. He barred Epstein prior to Epstein being charged with a sex crime. So Trump learned of Epstein making an inappropriate advance on a young girl who worked in the spa at the Mar-a-Lago Club, and he had security bar him from the site for a permanent ban. He was barred from all Trump properties. This was prior to his being exposed and charged in Florida for sex crimes. The police chief, who does a 6-month undercover investigation, gives the state prosecutor a case for the sex trafficking and statutory rape of 33 children. But the prosecutor, under pressure from Alan Dershowitz and Gerald Lefcourt and Leon Black and the other high-priced lawyers, Jeffrey Epstein, they reduced that to 1 count of solicitation. So Epstein gets a pass that I think is due to his connections with the intelligence agencies. We'll talk about that, but I want to bring in David Schoen, criminal defense attorney. He was retained by Jeffrey Epstein 9 days before Epstein's death. David and I agree that we think it is unlikely based on the medical examination by Dr. Michael Baden, the longtime respected New York medical examiner, that Epstein committed suicide, with all due respect to Kash Patel. But David discussed some of these matters with his client. David, welcome to the Stone Zone.
Thank you very much.
So this canard of Trump and Epstein, this was concocted by the Clintons, because you see, the Clintons continued to not only socialize but take millions of dollars from Epstein after he was convicted in Florida of a sex crime. And they continued to socialize with him. Bill was on the Lolita Express 23 times, according to the FAA manifest. I believe he visited the island, just based on the documents in the various lawsuits of Epstein's victims. I would say Bill was on the island at least 17 times. It was Epstein who provided the seed capital for the Clinton Foundation. But they have continued to spread this myth that Trump is the one that has vulnerabilities through his relationship with Epstein. Can you speak to this, David?
Yes, it's absolutely untrue. I know it for a fact. I discussed it with Mr. Epstein. And let me make something clear. You know, I posted on X or Twitter, whatever it's called, last night to set the record straight on this. A number of people wrote in saying, oh, well, he's violating attorney-client privilege. I can assure you I have not and never would and never have violated attorney-client privilege. This is an important point to Mr. Epstein. He didn't like it when people were falsely accused of being involved with him in illegal, improper activities, and so on. I specifically asked him about President Trump. And remember, this is at a time when it would have been in his best interest to implicate as many people as he could have, especially big shots, if he were inclined to go that way. And I had, very frank and candid discussions with him, as I had to have in preparing his case.
But today comes shocking news. Kash Patel says in an interview that they have no videos whatsoever of Jeffrey Epstein or any of his associates committing a crime. Now, we know for an absolute certainty, because we saw it with our own eyes, that they left his palatial home in New York. It's the single most expensive single-family home in Manhattan, with boxes and boxes of DVDs and hard drives. Also true of the Radiant's Palm Beach home. Who knows what they grabbed at the island. Where are those records? I think what Kash Patel is telling us is they have been destroyed, which is what I believe. We have a cover-up here. His death is a cover-up. His murder, in my opinion, is a cover-up. Why? Well, because I think it was Alex Acosta, the prosecutor, who gave him a slap on the wrist when he was appointed labor secretary, and he's preparing for Senate confirmation. A lawyer I know says to him, who's helping him, says to him, what are you going to say if they ask you why you gave Epstein a slap on the wrist? He says, well, I'm going to tell the truth, that he worked for the CIA, that the CIA director came to me and said, he's one of ours. We just want you to seal this case, which they did. The Epstein case was sealed for many years. The Palm Beach Post went to court to ultimately get these records unsealed. What do we learn? Epstein gets a 18-month sentence, but he's the only prisoner in the state of Florida who's allowed to serve his sentence in the county jail, in the air-conditioned brand new wing. He only has to be, quote unquote, in jail from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. Otherwise, he's free to go. The sheriff's office is driving around like a security detail, and he only serves 15 of his 18-month sentences. It goes right back to running his international sex trafficking and child abuse networks. And my guess is that that tells you the story. I believe Epstein, David, was he was an equal opportunity blackmailer. He worked for the CIA, as we know. I believe he probably worked for the Mossad and the Saudis as well. His entire story is improbable. He did not make his money. He has no hedge fund. So he goes from being an impoverished math teacher in Manhattan to being a billionaire by blackmailing people out of their money.
I believe I would have won Jeffrey Epstein's case at trial. I believe I would have won it in pretrial motions. If I didn't win it in pretrial motions, I would have won it at trial. And that was my role in the case, was to represent him. And I knew his case pretty well.
Well, look, this is a very key point. In America, everybody is entitled to both have a good lawyer and a fair trial. Both are very hard to get, I might add. And David, everybody's entitled to a stout legal defense. But I see this greater issue, and we're going to talk to Jack Posobiec from Human Events about this. This is the split in MAGA, and it causes some split, is not helpful. Steve Bannon saying, Elon Musk, we should deport him. Well, first of all, he's a U.S. citizen, so he can't be deported. And secondarily, he says the government should seize his companies. That's what we call communism. That's what Castro did. So I guess Steve is desperate for the clicks. I'm not happy that Elon Musk decided to air the family laundry in public. And again, he tells us this is about the big beautiful bill, but it's not clear that it isn't about these other issues, where I think he had some sense of frustration. But I hope he and Trump can put it back together, because it was a winning combination. I mean, I do think that he helped us win. I also think he's doing a great service on X, formerly known as Twitter. By the way, you can find me at Roger J. Stone Jr., Roger J. Stone Jr. Until yesterday, David Schoen, attorney at law, had never posted on his Twitter profile. How did your first post do, David?
First post seems to have done pretty well. It looks like it shows 7.5 million views and 107,000 likes. But let me say this, Roger. I don't believe that there's any person in this country who knows and understands more about politics and the American political scene, maybe others, better than you do, or as well as you do even. So you have a much greater sense of all of these broader issues than I do. What was important to me, and the reason I decided to post this time, was I don't like to see anyone falsely accused. And it's an important matter when it's the President of the United States. And I don't know that Elon Musk is accusing President Trump of having done something wrong. He said that he appears in the files. That's why the files were presented. I don't have any idea what's in any files. I know what the truth is in this case. I know that Jeffrey Epstein confided in me fully, and I know that I asked him specifically about this subject, and he assured me that he had no bad information about Donald Trump whatsoever at a time in which it would have behooved him to have had and to have used bad information if he had it.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. But again, the left jumps on this now. Strangely enough, the Democrats are jumping up and down, saying that the Epstein files should be released. I think they should be, but I think what Kash Patel is telling us is that most of the material is missing. Epstein's telephone book, the so-called Little Black Book, was published in my book, The Clintons' War on Women, in 2015. It was initially published by Gawker. Nick Bryant, who's a brilliant investigative reporter, was the first reporter to uncover the Epstein scandal, but he was a freelancer, and he went to all of the big magazines and newspapers of the day, and nobody would touch this incendiary story until Gawker finally broke the story. We learned who Jeffrey Epstein was. And then between the time that Epstein served his 15 months of soft time for his state crime, and when he's asked whether his crime was serious of molesting children, he said, "It's no worse than stealing a bagel," his quote. Between that time and the time he ultimately gets charged federally, it's only because of a reporter named Julie K. Brown with the Miami Herald. She is dogged. She knows that justice has not been done in this case, and she is dogged in breaking it open. And her stunning series of stories on Epstein are what finally drive federal prosecutors to grab Epstein. They didn't raid his home like they did with me. They came up to him in public. They even let the two nice FBI agents let them put a coat over his handcuffs. Very different than the way they treated me and my wife. There's this is a misfire by Elon, and I hope he will get back focused on free speech again.
If I can make one more quick point.
Certainly.
If I can make one more quick point.
You have 22 seconds.
It's important for all your listeners to keep in mind. As you say, there was this book. Many names appear in the book who did absolutely nothing wrong with Jeffrey Epstein. So
Absolutely.
when someone says this name is in a file, it's important. When I met with him several months before he was dead, in order for him to ask me if I would take over all of his litigation. He had fine lawyers at the time. I wasn't sure I wanted to. At that time, when I went to his house, I met with a former prime minister at his house. He had a picture of Bill Gates with a dollar bill in it. I asked, what's that about? He said he made a bet with Bill Gates. What was he going to bet him? So he bet him $1. He knew a lot of prominent people. All of those people loved being around him, wanted to be around him. All of a sudden, they all, never heard of him, never knew anything about him.
Yeah, all of that is true. All right, we got to go to a break. You're in the Stone Zone. Thanks to our guest, David Schoen. And coming up next, we'll talk about how RFK is delivering the goods in the fight to make America healthy again.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back in the zone. Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is certainly fulfilling his promise that he made when he was appointed Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, wisely and surgically taking measures that prevent big agriculture and big pharma from dictating the public health policy in the United States. RFK Jr. recently told Centers of Disease Control and Prevention to stop recommending the COVID-19 vaccination for newborns and for pregnant women, a decision that enraged the traditional health officials and media talking heads who are all beholden to the giant pharmaceutical corporations. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get another COVID shot, despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children, Kennedy said in a video address. The evidence really backs up RFK's decision. Pfizer's own clinical trials demonstrated that the COVID shots were linked to an increase in preterm births and miscarriages. Pfizer's report on pregnancy and lactation also showed the vaccine adversely affected babies during the nursing process, showing an increase of edema, vomiting, fever, and other issues. So I think Kennedy has been very, very wise. He's also gone after toxic food additives that are being banned in most of the countries in Europe, but are, strangely enough, regularly found in the food supply here in the United States. The Food and Drug Administration under RFK has ordered the removal of red dye number 3, citrus red dye number 20, orange B from the National Food Supply. They're also moving to ban red dye 40, blue dye 1, blue dye 2, green number 3, green number 5, yellow number 6. These all are tied, all these substances are tied to health conditions including diabetes, cancer, obesity, ADHD, gastrointestinal problems. If you buy a Fruit Loop in France, they don't have these chemicals, but if you buy them at Gristedes, they do. So I think RFK is the standout. Coming up, I have Jack Posobiec, the senior editor at the Human Events, going to tell us what he thinks of the TIFF, the Trump-Musk TIFF. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. We're in the Stone Zone again, and joining me now, direct from Poland, is the senior editor of Human Events, Navy intelligence officer, a proud Catholic, a MAGA patriot, also a New York Times bestselling author, Jack Posobiec. Jack, welcome to the Stone Zone.
Roger, thanks so much for having me on.
So I have to ask you off the top, how was Poland? You know, the Polish make their stuffed cabbage slightly different than the Hungarians, but it's actually still quite good. How was your trip?
I had a lot of Głąbki, or as my parents call it, pigs in a blanket in English, on our way home. And what can I say, Roger? An incredible nail-biter of a victory, come from behind win, being over there at this CPAC Poland, which sort of acted as a de facto political rally for the conservatives there in Poland, in southeastern Poland, right on the border with Ukraine, which funny enough, actually is the area of Poland where my family, the Posobiec family, actually hails from. It is, in fact, this will come as no shock to anyone, the most rock-ribbed, hardcore Catholic conservative part of all of Poland. So, big shocker that that's where the Posobiec family is from. And a 1-point victory for the conservative, campaigning hard on issues of Ukraine, issues of immigration, border security, and having the support and de facto endorsement of President Donald J. Trump. This carries a lot of weight in Poland, and it's a tremendous victory, one by which will absolutely be a huge victory, not only for all those things, but also for the pro-life movement, because the liberals in the Polish parliament have been trying to legalize abortion in Poland. This will put a stop to all of that.
It's very exciting. Look, I think nationalism is beginning to sweep Europe. They had to cancel the elections in Romania when the conservative candidate won. You have Meloni, who shifted back to the right now that she has Trump as a reliable ally. I liked her initially, then she started to suck up to the globalists, because I think perhaps she thought Joe Biden was going to get reelected. And then with Trump's election, she has gone back to her roots, which I certainly like. You have Hungary, which is a beacon of freedom for all of Eastern Europe. You have all of these. The French, they had to throw our candidate in jail because they're going to lose. People are tired of unregulated, uncontrolled immigration. It's destroyed every one of these countries. It has not destroyed Poland. It has not destroyed Romania. Why? Because they have never allowed it.
Well, Roger, that's exactly right. And actually, when I went over to CPAC Hungary, I had the honor of being invited to sit down with Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and he had a lot of conversations and a lot of things to say about this, specifically on the question of mass immigration. He talked about the problems that have been going on in Germany, the problems that have been going on in France. And Roger, I have to say, by the way, on the way home, we stopped. We had a long layover, basically a day-long layover in Paris. Wanted to take my children to see the Notre Dame after it had been reopened. It was an incredible experience. But that very night that we were in Paris, these mass riots kicked off. It was precipitated by a win in the soccer championship for the team, Parisian City team, and yet the migrants came out in full force and started setting fire to the city. Hundreds of people were arrested. I had to grab my wife and my children and say, this is a bad situation. We need to get back inside as soon as possible, because we saw it, Roger. We saw it going from Poland and Hungary and then to Paris. The Notre Dame is beautiful, but what they've done in terms of this migrant crisis, Paris is not Paris anymore. President Trump is exactly correct on that, and I just thank God that we were able to safely make it in and out in the midst of all these riots.
So, Jack, what do you make of the Elon Musk, Donald Trump tiff? Is this really about insufficient spending cuts in the big, beautiful bill, or is it about something else?
Well, Roger, I think it seems to be very personal on the perspective of Elon Musk, and I think that anyone reading this seems to think that it has a lot more to do. Certainly, the way he reacted is a bit more than just having a disagreement over spending. And in fact, this bill isn't even a budget bill. The budget bill comes up later in September. In fact, this is the bill regarding deportations, regarding President Trump's agenda, regarding no tax on tips, regarding no tax on overtime. This is an agenda bill. It's not a budget bill. And I certainly agree, by the way, that I would like to see a lot of the DOGE cuts, all of the DOGE cuts really codified into law. But clearly, I think there's a lot more going on. And what I hear, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. One of the top issues, of course, being this EV tax credit being removed as part of the bill, a huge blow to Tesla as a company, as well as Elon's pick for the NASA director ultimately being removed from his potential appointment, his nomination going in, which, of course, would have been a huge leverage point for SpaceX as well.
Jared Isaacman, who the White House actually announced that he would be the NASA director, and then it was pulled back when it was learned that he had given money to numerous Democrats, including Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, the senator from Georgia, Adam Schiff, and others. So I think Elon's nose was out of joint about that. He also they rejected his bid to have the air traffic controllers across the country use Starlink in their technology. I think he was miffed at that. I do think that he's done a tremendous service for his country. When I met him at Mar-a-Lago, I said, you've done more for free speech than anyone in the history of the country other than the founding fathers themselves. And I believe that to be true. But that's what got a target on his back. Remember, he flirted with supporting Ron DeSantis for president. It was really only after the events of Butler, Pennsylvania, when he saw how desperate the deep state was, and he realized that if Trump lost, Elon Musk was most likely going to jail, and his companies would have been destroyed. That's what Biden was seeking to do, and this was the payback for not just buying Twitter, but releasing all the proof of government-sponsored censorship. So he embarrassed the regime.
Roger, that's exactly right, and we know that this was a situation where, of course, and look, I'm an incredible fan of the X platform. I use it every single day, and I think it's something that Elon Musk did years before the election that really created the conditions for President Trump to be able to return to the political sphere, because it was during that time that the truth about COVID was finally able to be told in a public dissemination, a public manner. It was during that time that the truth about President Trump's lawfare was able to come to light. They were going to put President Trump in jail for the rest of his life. They tried in 4 different times in various states and locations to put him away, and obviously tried to strip him from the ballot, and even got to the point where they attempted to kill President Trump multiple times. And so it obviously was a key effort by President Trump, Elon Musk, and of course Bobby Kennedy and the MAHA movement, which I think really gets discounted a lot when people tell the story of 2024, not by yourself, of course, Roger, but many people and certainly the media completely discount the fact of the MAHA movement and the strength and the importance of Bobby Kennedy's endorsement, crossing the lines the first time a Kennedy has ever really publicly endorsed a Republican in such a way, and did so at just a seminal time for the United States of America. And so certainly I, like many others, do hope that there can be a way to mend this great schism.
Yeah, I agree with that. I must tell you, I think when Steve Bannon says that we should deport him. First, he's a U.S. citizen, so you can't deport him. And secondarily, that the government should seize his companies, or one of his companies. That's what we call communism. I think that is an overreaction. But look, he can be a powerful ally. He spent his own money to help Trump win. I do think it had a positive impact. Would Trump have won without it? It's impossible to say. But I think it is not good for the movement overall. Let's talk for a moment about the tariff war. The tariff war kind of got moved to the back burner here. But how do you think the president is doing in his efforts to make our trading partners pay their fair share, or to give us an even deal, I guess I should say?
Well, I think the president's doing very well. And for folks who have been keeping score, even though it's not really in the headlines, and people say, oh, well, he walked back to 150% tariffs. And I've seen a lot of people say, they'll be very upset to say, oh, well, he had these tariffs and the formula wasn't using the proper tariff formula for the net balance of trade deficit. Look, the trade deficit is actually flipping for the first time ever in years in the United States on the backs of the tariffs. The Atlanta Fed is now forecasting an incredible explosive growth for the U.S. GDP in terms of Q2 in the United States. And we currently still have tariffs that are in some cases 20% or more on these trading partners, including the additional tariffs that were labeled onto China. This, of course, is also coming at the same time that the Chinese are begging President Trump for a meeting. They're inviting him to Beijing. They're doing everything they can to roll out the red carpet for the president because, of course, China. This has always been about China. China has always been our biggest budget deficit. China is my background. I spent 2 years living there and working in trade in between the U.S. and China. And so this understanding that China's economy is so fragile because they are export driven. And there's a lot of talk about China having an expanding middle class now, and they certainly do, but it is completely built on exports and the fact that we allow these cheap Chinese goods to flood into our market. And this was, I think, foolishly, this most favored nation status was given by the previous, the original George Bush administration and the Clintons before them, paving the way for all of this. This was never meant to be part of the deal when Nixon went to China in the first place, as you of all people know, that we were never supposed to give them this most favored nation status. But this was how the system of globalism was built. And what President Trump is smartly doing is understanding that the system of globalism is crumbling, and it's crumbling on its own. But so what he's going to do is put America in a position where we can benefit, we can be strengthened, and we don't have to have these global commitments the way that we have in the past, and actually right the ship economically for the American people and the American manufacturer, who is usually the last when it comes to Wall Street's way of thinking.
I could not agree more. I really do think that people need to recognize that there are three legs to Trump's economic stool. It is first and foremost, it is better tariff deals with all of our trading partners. An issue he's been talking back all the way back to 1988, because he hated NAFTA, he hated GATT, he hated these one-size-fits-all trade deals that completely disadvantaged the United States, and as the late, great Ross Perot said, sucked the jobs out of America. But tax reduction is every bit as important. I don't love this AI stuff that is in the big, beautiful bill that stops the states from restricting AI. I think that's a bad idea. As someone who can tell you there are hundreds of AI videos of me saying things I never said, this is extraordinarily dangerous. I'm very concerned about it.
Well, Roger, that's right. And one of the, I suppose one of the messages that I've heard Stephen Miller and the White House put out regarding the AI piece of the bill is what they're really aiming at here, and perhaps this language can be tightened up, but what they're really aiming at is blocking California, because most of these companies are based in California, blocking California from having control over all regulation of AI. Basically, that China, and they saw that Newsom was having some plans to be able to regulate AI at the state level, which of course would have been written by the companies themselves. And so I can understand perhaps the considerations there, but would also want to make sure that that the language is tightened up as much as possible.
I agree. It is concerning. But the good news here is that the Golden Dome funding is in there. The Golden Dome, which we used to call the Strategic Defense Initiative under Reagan, the left mocked us by calling it Star Wars, but it's working in Israel, protects Israel from incoming missiles, could protect our country. In some cases, the Congress has voted funding for parts of it, but still hasn't been built. The one for the East Coast, they have never cited. Should go to Fort Drum in upstate New York. That makes the most sense, but they're dragging their feet. I think that funding is also in the big, beautiful bill. Not to mention the continuation of the largest tax cuts in American history. It's not perfect. Elon's not wrong about that, but it's good and it's a start. They have a $98.4 billion rescission bill going up to the House next week. That's where the cutting actually needs to be done, and that is the third leg of the stool, cutting the wasteful spending, the fraud, the corruption, and so on. We're going to be right back with Jack Posobiec. You can follow him on X as Jack Posobiec, how original. He's also at Human Events, where he is the senior editor. We're going to be talking about the Trump administration, how Robert Kennedy is doing very specifically when we come back on the other side. So whatever you do, please, my friends, don't touch that dial.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back in the zone. I'm talking to Jack Posobiec, the senior editor at Human Events, served his country with distinction as a naval intelligence officer. He's a keen analyst of the political scene. He has a unique set of sources. He's a man who always seems to be one step ahead. If you don't watch him at Human Events Daily, I strongly recommend it to you. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Taking on big pharma and big agriculture. This is not going to be an easy fight, but he's fulfilling what I wanted him to do. This is what I voted for. Jack, what do you think?
Well, Roger, I think that's exactly right. And I love just even, I think it was either today or yesterday, he announced this nutrition education mandate, these new plans for requiring American medical schools to offer nutrition courses, and basically saying that all federal funding will be pulled, and using that leverage, the same way we see President Trump doing with Harvard and others. He's now saying that your federal funding will be cut if you do not offer this nutrition education and these programs. And these are really things that the federal government can be doing and should have been doing all along, rather than serving as a piggy bank for these universities. I think we need a restructuring of the way the federal government's spending of our taxpayer dollars are done. And the Maha movement is obviously one of the most important ways to do this. I've said for quite some time that the Maha movement is actually the most politically popular movement in America today. And I see this with when I talk to my wife, who is not someone who's, she knows about politics from being married to me, but she just doesn't follow politics on a regular basis the same way that, news junkies like myself do. But she is absolutely enamored with the Maha movement. She was born in Eastern Europe, came to the United States, and has always asked questions. What is wrong with your food? What is wrong with your medicine? And that's exactly the type of demographic that Bobby Kennedy is speaking to. Politically, it makes the most sense. And for America's health and America's nutrition, it makes the most sense. Roger, you mentioned earlier that I just got back from Europe. Europe has tons of issues, but they don't have the same type of health issues, the food issues, and the nutrition issues that the United States does. And unfortunately, and your friend and mine, Tony Lyons, have been chatting about this a little bit as well, and he made a point to me recently saying that we've done so much to make food cheaper and say that we're cutting costs in order to do so, and that's why we've put chemicals in all of our food and why we have factory farms the way that we do. But unfortunately, we're not actually saving any money, because all of those costs then go into our increased healthcare bills end-of-life spending, increases in health insurance that we have to pay because of chronic illness and chronic inflammation, something that, of course, Big Pharma is more than happy to keep going because it creates a financial incentive for them.
There we have it. We have to wrap it there. I want to thank my guest, Jack Posobiec with Human Events, and thank you for tuning in to the Stone Zone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and a Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?